it's Chantel with Wildberry Quilting, and I had lots of requests to show you guys how to do triangles on a roll. So let's go ahead and jump right into that today. The thing that you need to do is check your pattern and see what sizes you're going to need for your half square triangle paper. There is always the option to cut this out larger. You could do this as these two pieces, and that would save you some time if you are making a lot of half square triangles. This particular pattern, I only need one of these sections. So instead of cutting it like this, where I would have two, I will simply cut it for one. And when I do this, you don't want to come over too far onto your line. Let me see if I can zoom in for you. If you place your ruler over the top of your line, you're going to be cutting into this triangle. You actually want to come over to where you can see your line beside your ruler, and then you will cut it apart. And as you can see, that gives me the cut directly on my line. I have a little bit showing on this side and a little bit showing on this side. So I have these pieces right here, and I will go through and I will cut out a lot of them so that I can go through and do each of these. You will place your fabrics on top of one on top of the other. Let's move these ones out of the way so they're not distracting. And I have right sides facing. This one's white, so it doesn't really have a right side. They're both the same. But if you did have two printed fabrics, you would want to make sure that they are both facing each other with right sides. Then we are going to place our triangles on a roll over the top. As you can see, I cut this fabric an extra half of an inch on both sides, both width and height. And that gives me an extra 1/4 inch on all sides when I lay my paper over the top. I am going to pin or clip this into place. For me, I will likely just clip, but pins are also a very good option for this. In fact, if I had my pins beside me, I would probably choose to pin in this situation, despite the fact that I normally use clips. All right, I'm going to finish pinning this, and once I get done, I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine, and we are going to stitch along the dotted lines, all 4 of them. So let's go do that. All right, so over here at the machine, and we are going to get started stitching. We are going to stitch these along the dotted lines. Do not stitch on the solid lines, only the dotted ones. And before we do that, we are going to lower our stitch length to where we have smaller stitches. I'm going to go to a 2.0 instead of a 2.5. And we're going to start from stitching off of the paper to stitching on it. Now, if you are doing a lot of these, rather than sitting here and twisting each one, I recommend sewing off of one and then sewing right onto another one. You will just save yourself a little bit of time if you are piecing that way. Since I'm doing this for a demonstration, I am not going to continue stitching all of these that way though. I will do that for the remainder of them, but for the first one, we are just going to do it as a demonstration. And you will see that in another video. I am going to be stitching this whole quilt, so we will go over that. And keep an eye out for that video because that will be coming along soon after this one. Again, we're just stitching off of the edge of our paper. And then we can start from off of our paper, stitch onto it. And the same thing here. All right, our stitching is all done on this one. Now we're going to move over to the cutting mat and I will show you how to cut this apart. All right, so this has all been stitched. Now we're cutting it apart. And I am going to actually start by cutting the outside and trimming it all up. Everywhere where there is a black line or was a black line from us cutting it apart, we are going to trim. And this is just to even it all up. On all sides first. It's much easier to cut it this way before you cut it apart. Now I'm going to cut these two pieces apart. Now since I do not have I have this writing blocking my line down here, I'm actually going to use the sides of my block to measure where I need to go rather than that line. I can still use part of it, but this kind of gives me a better idea. And cut that apart. And then we're just going to cut these two apart. And these two. Now, I do have this small portion where I stitched, and that was because we were doing two at a time. We can cut off where that line actually is. And oops, that one did not come. And that actually will remove that dog ear, and it will also remove where it was stitched a little bit there. It's not completely necessary. You don't have to do that. It's in the seam allowance, so that stitch won't prevent it from opening up or anything. Now, but that is a good way to remove a dog ear. Now, when it comes time to remove your paper, it's a good idea to fold it back like this. And I find that you don't damage your stitches at all if you actually rip it from in the center to where your stitches are and then just pull it off. And then you can just, this piece removes very easily. If you pull it straight from the side up here, you run the risk of damaging your stitches or pulling out some stitches at the edge where your stitching is actually starting. And it prevents that if you do start right from the center and rip it first. It's also very satisfying. This is definitely the easiest way that I have found to remove the paper, though, after lots of trial and error from the first time that I used paper piecing. And of course, when you use the smaller stitch length, that also helps with removing stitching. Well, not removing stitching, removing the paper, because it becomes more perforated. Again, there we go. And this just comes off. if you can grab a hold of it, that is. Now, in this box that this particular project came in, we did get a little pen that you fill with water, and you would go along that seam line and then peel it off. My pen is damaged, but Fat Quarter Shop is sending me a new one. I don't have that new one yet though, so I'm going to use the damaged one, and we will test that out in a different video. And I'll tell you how well that works for me, if it makes it easier or how I like that. All right, guys, so that's how we use the triangles on a roll. I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.